No, I think this year will be a very important year in China in terms of private equity in several senses. One is that, the domestic renminbi private equity funds are growing very rapidly. And it's a watershed year because the first domestic private equity fund upon inception was 20 billion renminbi yuan. So it's about $3 billion. So you can see that, once they decided to do it, size really matters in China. But and the government has already approved up to about 9 private equity funds, each of which is in the range of 10 to 20 billion renminbi yuan. So we are talking about sizable amount of money. But these are domestic renminbi funds to be invested domestically, and exit strategy will mostly be domestic, IPOs. However, more and more it is happening that major private equity funds abroad, especially from the United States, rather than purely going to China to identify for investment opportunities, they are going there to raise money in 2 ways. One is to help raise dollar funds, because China right now sits on a pile of about 2 trillion foreign currency, and they lack talents. They need people to help them to manage the money. But on the other hand, they are also going there to set up their presence to raise renminbi private equity funds. So this is unheard of, several years ago, and this will be a very important situation. Thirdly, I think, we are talking about globalization for many of the major Chinese companies. From the outside perspective, when you look at China, you tend to associate China's competitiveness with, cheap labor. Far from it. I think Sanjay actually hit on the right point. China has one of the very developed infrastructure framework in China. And this really sets China apart from many other developing countries. And I think, once we all emerge out from this economic crisis, China most likely will be in the leading pack. So I think talking about these major Chinese companies who have been, battling through the very competitive forces in China, now that, they can, emerge onto the world scene, I think, globalization, they need funding most likely from Chinese banks or policy banks in China, but they are looking for opportunities. They are looking for, opportunities in a variety of sectors, including energy, for example, which is very natural for China, but also for technology, companies as well as, companies with good brand names, because they want to leverage off on a good brand and then, produce both for the domestic market in China as well as for the international market. So I think, personally, I believe that there will be a lot of exciting things coming out of China in the private equity side, both domestically as well as involving funding from abroad.